If you clicked on this video, you're probably trying to figure out how to take a broken stud out of a cylinder head, probably from an exhaust manifold, most likely, like we have today. You have three types of broken studs. One where you're gonna get a lot of stud above the surface, one near the surface, and then one below the surface, okay? Today, we actually have this type right here, but we'll go over all three. The one with the stud that's above, way above the surface, maybe you're lucky, maybe you could get 2 nuts, okay? And then back out that stud, all right? It normally doesn't work that way, and if you can't get a nut on it, it's gonna be impossible. My best advice is to cut this down to size so it'll look like our middle picture here. The reason being, if you weld a nut to this top over here, it's just gonna break in this section here on the weak spot, and it's just gonna get shorter and shorter. Instead of wasting time, cut that bolt down, okay, and weld your nut to that short stud. Once welded to it, that heat is gonna shock this broken stud. What that's gonna do is allow you to break free any corrosion or rust and allow you to back that stud out. The one on the Mercedes that we have today, the stud is actually broken below the surface. What we're going to do is build some weld up here and not put the nut yet. First, we're going to actually, use the bigger picture here, weld a washer to that built up weld. Once the washer is welded, we're then going to weld the nut to our washer, all right? All of these techniques don't work unless you are welding. Here's a picture of my welder and the wire. You need to be welding directly to that stud. If you accidentally catch either the washer or the nut first, it'll break off completely. You're not gonna get good penetration. So the trick to this is make sure you're directly welding to the stud first and building off of that. It takes a lot of practice. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen the first time. I have an apprentice now. He went through like 20, 30 bolts getting a stud out the other day, but he finally got it. I mean, it takes time, it takes practice. Today, hopefully, I save you a little bit of time and guessing by showing you guys how it's done, all right? Today, we're working with aluminum and a steel stud. This works in our favor because steel does not stick to aluminum, all right? But what will happen if we're welding too long, you gotta remember, aluminum has a lower melting point than steel, all right? If we hold it for too long, we have a possibility of melting that cylinder head, which is not what we want to do today, all right? So you gotta hit this with short bursts. But that's enough talking. Let's just get right into it. Well, what we're working on is a 2012 CLS 550. We were replacing the turbo and the turbo manifold when we discovered 2 broken bolts at point 1 and point 2. Here on the car, show you where that exactly is. And it is up there. Let's try to get the camera up there. But there is the one broken bolt, and where's the other one? There's the other one. All right, just to show you what kind of space we're working with, we're all the way back here. I mean, we made a lot of space getting the turbo out, so it's actually not that bad. But yeah, welder we will be working with today is a Miller-Matic MIG welder, okay? We got regular mild steel wire in it. This is all we're gonna use. We're gonna use this, we're gonna use some fender washers and nuts, and we're gonna try to get these 2 broken studs out. First step to prepping is take some paper towels. We're gonna wet them, all right, and then wring them out. You don't want any extra water in there, okay? The first thing we're gonna do is block these exhaust ports. The last thing you want to do is get some weld slag accidentally into the cylinder and you can say goodbye to your engine. So we're gonna protect the, excuse me, we're gonna protect the exhaust valves and the cylinders with these damp paper towels. Why damp? It's so they don't catch fire while you're welding. And here's the exhaust ports all blocked off. with some damp towel. If you have not yet done it, now is the time. Do I have gas? Yes, I have gas. Now is the time to disconnect that car's battery, okay? You are about to send a big amount of voltage and amperage throughout this engine, and the worst thing that can happen is you fry all the modules on the car. So do yourself a favor, disconnect the battery so that does not happen. Last bit of prep before we start welding is to clean the surfaces. All right, we can't have any oil on the stud because the name of the game is penetration. We want the best penetration possible, but we can't have any oil. Hey, yo, no diddy, bro. But I don't care what you use. Rubbing alcohol, brake clean, acetone. I prefer acetone while welding. Get these studs nice and clean before we begin. And there's the first one. See, we got good penetration on the broken stud. Right, we then welded the washer to that buildup, and then finally the nut to the washer. It was a little off-centered, but that's okay. It was still enough penetration, and we got it out. Let's do the second one. And there you have it. It only took us 1 or 2 tries, but we got both broken studs out. Beautifully done. And guys, just remember, I've done hundreds of these. Sometimes it would take me 20, 30 times to try to get it right. Don't get discouraged. Just remember, the most important thing is that you got to get good penetration on the stud initially. All right, if you notice when I'm welding, my initial weld to build up onto the stud is maybe half a second longer than my other welds. After that first penetration, I'm just tapping, making sure my weld doesn't get too hot as to melt the aluminum. But yeah, we're basically shocking the broken stud. And as you can see, it worked perfectly with the washer and nut technique. Okay, don't forget, you gotta retap these holes, repair them, make sure a brand new bolt goes in and out perfectly before you try to install your exhaust manifold or whatever you had the broken stud on. Cheers, guys.